Hi guys, it's Mrs. Horman. We're going to do the second section of Pacific. So this is the second part of the week. What you see in front of you is called Nukuru. She is not called a Nukuru. The area she comes from is called a Nukuru. She is just simply called the female deity. She is believed to be a little bit larger than life. She's 5.5 feet tall. Representation of the evil goddess Kawe, Kawe. And so what you're looking at is a wooden sculpture from either the late 18th, early 19th century. And she is from Nakuru, Micronesia. So let's show you where that is. Remember, we're looking at Micronesia. So it's in that little section of the ocean just above Australia. So let's talk about who she is, why she's special. First, she's special because of her size. She's 5.5 feet tall. And while there are many female deity statues that still exist, there are very few that are this size left. It is believed that based on some of the wearing that's on her, that she would have been kept in a sheltered place outside. So not entirely inside. She would have been kept outside, but she would have been in some place that was sheltered, like that had 3 walls and 1 wall open or something like that. It is believed that she may be a fertility idol, or one that is a theory that is gaining traction, is actually that she, because she is Kawe, the goddess of evil, that she is believed to have had control over natural disasters. Thus, the reason she would have been kept outside. And so with things like this, as theories change, I like to make sure that I, give you both. So because of the pronounced breast area, we always go to, oh, she must be a fertility idol, except that's really not, it's really becoming less and less preferred theory. So she's made of very hard wood, which means that she can withstand the storms that would have ravaged Polynesia like once a year, terrible storms. And so the idea that she would have been kept outside in a 3-walled shelter makes sense if we're looking at her as the goddess who had control over natural disasters. So if, she is this troublemaker goddess, they would want her to be happy. They wouldn't want her in their homes, which is why, that she is probably kept in an outside place. Also kept in an outside place because she deals with weather, extreme weather. They really like to point out that based on a couple of places where they have been found, they believe that the art history community believes that she may have actually been kept in a place like a 3-walled enclosure where people would have left gifts for her. They would have offered her goods, pieces of the first harvest, possibly fish or vegetables. But there is evidence also in the enclosures that some of them have come out of, that there might have been human sacrifice as well. So if she is the evil goddess Kawe, and we believe that she can control, the weather and natural disasters, you definitely want to keep her happy, because if you don't, that's when the terrible storms come, and that's when the monsoons come, and that's when the terrible wind comes. And so it is this belief that she is the goddess of bad things that happen, that emerging belief. Now, what's interesting about her is, unlike most figures where the head is round, this is very pointy, a very pointy chin. Instead of being so round, it's very angular. She has a very pointy little nose that comes off of here. Things are She's very small, little tiny hands. This is another one. So it's we're dealing with that. Her dimensions are odd as well. You have this little bit of where her belly button might be, and her kneecaps are identified here. But the fact that we have almost no facial features, and that her chin is so pointy, is really actually unsettling. A lot of people find her to be difficult to look at because the facial features are so far away from what is identifiable as human. And so there is our female deity, possibly the goddess Kawe, Kawe, from Nakura, Micronesia. There you go. There's her little pointy nose and her little pointy chin and her little kneecaps. She's a little bit disorienting, and she makes you a little uncomfortable. But you can see the evidence of weathering as well. So there she is. Okay, this is one of my favorites. I love this little guy. This is called a book or a mask. Book, like like not quite book, B-O-O-K, but kind of like a light U book. This is from the Torres Strait in Micronesia. So let's look at where that is. So let's, when we look at Australia, here's the tip of Australia, and here's where New Guinea comes down. And remember, I said Micronesia is up here off the northeastern coast of New Guinea. The Torres Strait is right here. Okay, that bit of water that separates New Guinea from Australia. Okay, so that's where we are. I love this little guy. He's adorable. Let me go back so that I can make sure you have everything you need here. The Torres Strait, that's where it's from, mid to late 19th century. And look at the things that it's made of. It's made from a turtle shell. Turtle shell is very unique to this area of the world as far as art goes. They were very, very, very precious. They were very expensive. The Europeans would come to get tortoise shell from this area of the world in order to make various things that were decorative, vases, spoons, things like that, picture frames. So tortoiseshell is very precious and was a huge commodity for them. So it's a big deal that we have that. We have wood in the construction of the bird, fiber. So we see the raffia coming down and some here off the wings as well. We have some feathers and we have some shells that make up this mask. So this mask is at the Metropolitan Museum in New York City. And it is stunningly beautiful. If you ever have the opportunity to get to New York City, definitely go to the Met. So the reason I love to give you this is here's that tortoise shell down here, but also the wings. Do you see the sort of the pattern in these wings of this bird? So what we're looking at is it should remind us a little bit of Africa, because this is a mask that would have been worn during performance. And so you would put this mask on, and during the performance, they would they would dance stories of their people and the history of their people and things like that. And while they would dance, look at all of the pieces on here that could move. The feathers could move. The eyes on the top of the bird could wiggle back and forth. The wings of the bird could flap up and down. The raffia in the back could sway back and forth. But you'll also notice that there is a face on the top there, and that face is to represent an ancestor, an important ancestor. And why do we have a bird? Because here in this area of the world, they use the term that you're most familiar with is totem pole. You can see them in the back. These idea of these posts that have carvings in them and stuff like that. They're not just Native American. They happen in Oceania as well. And here the bird is a really important representation for this particular family. So that's why you have the face of the ancestor there, but the bird is on top, because for this family, that bird is important. And then during the dance, they would make the gestures of the bird and things like that. Now, here is one of those times again where we talk about the terrible things that white people have done over the history of the world that have really negatively impacted our current ability to know, see, and learn history. When missionaries came to this area of the world in Micronesia, Polynesia, many of the things that they found that represented this sort of totemic magic, this shamanic magic that you would have used, the Christian missionaries were like, you shouldn't do that. That's bad and terrible and awful. And then they took them and burned them. So there are very few of these books left because so many of them were destroyed by missionaries. But what we do know about them is they would have been kept in a very special house that would have been constructed out of local stone. And it would have been almost like it was put into like, thinking back to like Saint Foy, like it's almost like a reliquary. It's like a little house that is built for this sacred special thing. And as we're making, connections to things, you should definitely connect this to the Kwakwaka masks, of the Pacific Northwestern tribes that were destroyed by missionaries. You definitely connect this to either the Aka elephant mask or the Bundu masks with the idea of the movement while dancing. So the movement happens while they're dancing. Then there's even more implied movement by the feathers on the top, and then the frigate bird, that's what it's called, frigate. That's the kind of bird it is, it's frigate. So this frigate bird that's there, and then the lattice hair, the raffia hair, and then you see this lattice work. And what the heck is this supposed to be? Well, dating all the way back to our Lamasu and some of our others, this is a beard. Okay, so we have this lattice work wooden beard that gives this idea of wisdom, and the face, which is has the shells and the pieces of the mouth cut out. We really see that it is a human face because it's meant to be the ancestors. And what's really great is we're really broken into kind of like the standard of ore into registers. We have this helmet at the bottom, then we have the ancestor, and then we have the bird. We're sort of broken into these pieces. It would have been used with a fully raffia grass costume at the bottom, and they would have been used during ceremonies. So what kind of ceremonies? There would have been, the thoughts are that they were used in 3 separate ceremonies. A ceremony for male initiation, again, because we're talking to the ancestors, a ceremony for fertility, both of humans and the crops, again, going back to the wisdom of the ancestors. And then finally, a death ceremony, asking the ancestors to help the soul of the dead to move to this next place. So those were those ceremonies. And within them, there often was used drums and chanting and fire. And their idea is that they are using the image of the ancestors, of some of the elders, but also mixing it in combination with mythical beings, sacred beings that watched over them and the people of their village. And so you do get this really cool anthropomorphic, zoomorphic, great combination of human figures and animal figures, and the movement and the fire, which, like the Kwakwaka mask, with the fire and the light and the flickering of it amplifies the movement. I'm sure they were absolutely stunningly beautiful to see in movement. But this is, as I said, the book mask from the Torres Strait here, right here between New Guinea and Australia. And this is our last piece for the day. And I also love him. I really enjoy oceanic art. it is similar to, in so many ways, um, American art, European art, and African art, but it is also so unique in so many ways that it's like you find that there are things in it you're like, that looks really familiar, but then there's stuff where you're like, I have no idea what that's supposed to be. And it's this amazing mixture of enough of it that makes you feel comfortable, like, oh, I can identify that. And then also enough of it that where you're like, I got to learn that because it's so different from anything I know. So this piece is Tamati Waka Nene. And that is the name of this person you see here, this person in the portrait. And the portrait was painted by Gottfried Lindauer, who was a famous painter from New Zealand. It was painted in 1890. It's oil on canvas. And that should make you go, huh, like, Miss Horman, we're in Oceania, we're in the Pacific. Why are we looking at something that kind of looks like a British portrait and is oil on canvas and is like doesn't seem right? Well, let's talk about why. Gottfried Lindauer was a painter who was classically trained in New Zealand, and he was famous for making portraits. But most importantly, he was famous for making portraits of Maori leaders, like the Maori people. And he would go into these areas of Micronesia and Polynesia and find these Maori chiefs. And Maori, in case you don't know how to spell it, is Maori. So he would go to these places and find these Maori chiefs, and he would paint them. And the Maori word for chief is nene. Okay, so that is chief. Tamati Waka is his name. Tamati Waka chief. Okay, and so Landauer, he traveled and painted these portraits. Now, why does he do this? Because this is a time period where, you know, if you are like a Maori tribe and your favorite chief has died, you want to be able to commemorate them. And if this guy, Gottfried Lindauer, rolls by and is like, oh yeah, I can paint this portrait of your Maori chief that died, so that you can always have it and remember exactly what he looked like, that becomes very popular. And so what you see here is Tamati Waka being presented in his traditional symbols of his Maori rank. So you first see, I mean, literally the very first thing that probably jumps out at you when this picture comes up are his face tattoos, his face markings. And, you know, you see stuff similar to this, even in simple children's things like Moana. You know, the Rock has these sort of Maori tattoos. The god Maui from Moana has all these tattoos. So, you know, you're looking at the first, you see the face tattoos, and they indicate his rank. They indicate his Maori group he is with. And then you see that he has this really cool staff that is his staff of power and position. And hopefully you notice that there's this eye that's kind of staring at you. And again, that is part of being a good leader. You're always watching. The feathers are very important. They're sort of sacred. And so you see that he has this staff that allows us to see that he is, you know, blessed by the gods, and he has power, and he's always watching over his people, but not in a you know, that weird lady from, you know, Monsters University. I'm watching you, Mike Wazowski. No, not that. Like the one that's, you know, like the way that the Moai do, that they are ever present and ever watching. And so I'm going to zoom in here on this picture. So when Gottfried Lindauer came to this area where Tamati Waka was, he traveled all around Micronesia and Polynesia, and he was commissioned to do works. And so when he shows up, at this area, they have this photograph that was taken of Tamati Waka. Now, what's interesting is there's been some research lately that says that many of these Maori leaders who had these facial tattoos, they actually don't photograph well, and that there are many pictures of Maori leaders that they would have had facial markings, but the photographs couldn't capture them because of the kind of daguerreotype photogravure that was being used at the time. But here you see, this is a really great representation. So, Gottfried Lindauer comes up to this Maori community, and Tamati Waka had died in 1871. And now this is 1890. So this is what we call a posthumous portrait, something that happens to you after you're dead. So posthumous is spelled like post, P-O-S-T, and then humus, H-U-M-O-U-S. So this is a posthumous portrait. So why do the members of his tribe want to remember him? Well, there's a really good reason. Tamati Waka lived from 1785 until 1871. Okay? In 1845 and 1846, there was a war with the British called the Flagstaff War. And during this, war with the British, he is in charge of this tribe, and he does some very important things. He's the leader actually of several smaller clans that have come together as a single group. And he, in working with the British, agrees to do a couple of things. And one of the things that he agreed to do was to end the war with the British on the following, with the following rules, which was he would end his war with the British, and he would allow the British to come to the island and be on the island and live and use its resources, even trade from the island. The British had to sign, though, that none of the people that were part of these clans on any of these islands would ever be taken into slavery. And because he secured freedom and a good life for all of his people, and the British did keep their word, he was revered. Tamati Waka, after a long period of time of interacting with the British, eventually actually converts to Christianity, this was not done under duress. The story goes that as he worked with the Europeans and mostly the English that came there, he trusted them and they trusted him, and they fell into a friendship, and he began to study the things that they believed, and he converted on his own. And the thing that makes it, I think, the most clear that this was a personal decision is not only does he convert to Christianity, but he also takes an English name. And so let's go back here, and we see that his name is Tamati Waka. And remember, Nene is chief, so you can take that's not part of his name, but his name is Tamati Waka. And he takes an English name and becomes Thomas Walker, and is known for the last few years of his life as Thomas Walker. This is modern day Maori tattooing, which I think is beautiful. And so, you see that he has this beautiful, beautiful face tattoos, which he keeps. But he embraces much of the European lifestyle. So his people were so thankful for the peace treaty that he signed that they had Gottfried Lindauer create this posthumous portrait. So if we were in class, what I would do now is I would take a little pause and I would show you a couple of these videos. And I'm not going to do that right now, but I am going to, on the place where I put this video for you to watch, I will put the links to these. What is a haka? A haka is a traditional Maori dance that is done for a couple of different reasons. It is done in an important event or commemoration, and so sometimes you see them being done here. This is a wedding haka. This one is beautiful. It is a Maori woman who marries a non-Maori man, and her brother and his friends welcome her new husband into the family by doing the haka together, and he becomes part of their wedding haka. And it's officially like her family welcoming him into their Maori tradition. The rugby haka is awesome. The New Zealand All Blacks, they do a haka before most of their rugby matches because the belief is that the Maori warriors and things like that would do a haka before they went out to war. And when you look at their facials, the faces that they make, and you look at their body language, and you see that the way that the haka is done, it is meant to be intimidating. There's also a really beautiful funeral haka that a bunch of students did for a classmate of theirs that died. So I'm definitely going to put these up there. I don't think I'm going to put the funeral haka up there, but if you've watched these and you're like, oh, I'd like to see that, then you can go ahead and watch those. But what's really wonderful is it's such a wonderful embrace of their culture. And when you watch this haka, I want you to think not only of Tamati waka, but I want you to also think about this book mask, because the haka is the kind of thing that they would have been doing when they were wearing this mask, and they would have embraced their culture. And they would have danced this haka with a mask like this on. So that's the end of what I'm calling week 1 of Pacific. And I will see you again next time. Okay. Bye, guys.